I want to talk today about getting to know someone, that special person that you have just met, that person who seems to be everything that you've always wanted and wished for, a person who has swept you off your feet. And now comes the question of how do you really get to know this person? Well, this is the news for you. If you are an incurable romantic, you will be looking at the person through distorted lenses. And this usually is the case in the honeymoon phase, in the initial stage of getting to know someone, when everything they say is perfect and everything they do is just wonderful, and you see them as virtually flawless. Well, we know, of course, that this is not going to last forever. And comes the question of how do you really get to know a person? Do you know a person as they are romantically, or do you really get to know a person as they are consistently? I submit to you that the only way that you can truly get to know a person is not by knowing the romantic person, but by knowing the consistent person, which will unfold before you if you are ready and willing to see over time. You see, romance is a fiction. I'll even be a little bit more blunt. Romance is a lie. It is something that is created to give us a fantasy like experience of another person. Romance is like going to Disneyland. Now, before I even explain to you my take on romance and your involvement romantically with the person that will impede you from seeing who the person really is, let me say that I have absolutely nothing against romance. I consider myself romantic when it's required by the occasion. But it is not the foundation upon which a relationship should be built, because it is a foundation of shifting sand that won't hold the weight of a long-term relationship. You see, romance, it is an exaggerated perception of the person that you choose to see in an ideal way that they could never hold up to. Just listen to the songs, the romantic songs that you hear idolizing a person. Some of the typical lyrics could be, "You are my sun, you are the moon, you are my everything. I can't live without you. You're my happiness, you're my world, you're my all." Wow! When you really think about it, these are the type of things that you should be ascribing to God. You're my everything. You're my sun. You're my moon. You're my world. Without you, I can't exist. These are things that are ascribed and should be only ascribed to God. In fact, when you place a person on the deified pedestal of romance and seeing that person as everything to you, you are in essence violating the first commandment of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not have false gods before me. And you make another romantic person a false god when you idolize that person to the very extreme. So, this is the first problem. And the first thing that you need to realize is that romance is a fiction. Romance is essentially an exaggerated claim that is a lie about any human individual. And I like to compare romanticizing a person with going to Disneyland. Now, I love to go to Disneyland. I have no problem enjoying the fantasy world of Disneyland. I enjoy the rides and the experience and everything else that Disneyland entails. But once I walk out of that park, I am back to reality, and I don't expect the world to behave like Disneyland. In the same way, when you experience romantic moments with a person, enjoy those romantic moments, but don't base your entire relationship on the romantic moment that you're experiencing, because it doesn't reveal who the consistent person is. You need to get to know a person in situations consistently outside of that which is romantic. Because a romantic person can be very charming, but I think it was Schopenhauer said, even scoundrels can be charming. So just because a person is skilled in creating a romantic ambiance doesn't mean that the person's values are consistent with yours, which is something that you need to observe outside of a romantic type situation. If a person is romantic and can get you to feel in that other world by whining and dining and taking you to shiny lit beaches at night, dinner, dancing, and all of the other accoutrements of romance, says nothing to the compatibility and permanence of a relationship with this person. You need to observe dispassionately a person in non romantic situations. What good is it of a person who is very romantic and consistently breaks his or her word? What good is a person who can make you feel swept off of your feet, who lies and tries to assuage the situation with being romantic? A person is who they are consistently in non romantic situations. And if what you see is something that you don't like, you cannot discard this with the belief that, oh, it doesn't mean anything. He or she will change in time. Or I can help them change that. It doesn't work like that either. Because essentially, the core personality of each person is who they are. And there's nothing that you or anyone else can do to change the core personality of someone else. What you see is what you get. Now, I can explain this even better using the cartoon characters of Winnie the Pooh. When we talk about core personality is what it is. Let's take some of the characters of Winnie the Pooh. We all know Tigger, right? He's bouncy and joyful and enthusiastic and overflowing with energy. The wonderful thing about Tigger, that Tigger's the only one, and he bounces around and bounces around. Okay, that's who Tigger is. And let's take Igor. Igor is the donkey who moves slowly, talks slowly, and never lifts his spirits higher than a flat line. And this is who Igor is on a daily basis. Hello, how are you doing? And so on and so forth. Let's examine the two extremes that I brought up in the beginning. Could you imagine that Eeyore, the donkey, could wake up the next morning and suddenly be like Tigger? The wonderful thing about Igor, that Igor's the only one. Could you imagine him bouncing all around the place and being different from his core personality? Or conversely speaking, could you imagine Tigger waking up the next morning and then suddenly be on a flat line of expression? Hello, how are you doing? How's everything? Of course you couldn't. And my point is that the core personality of each person is who or she is. Now, you are either able to accept the core personality of someone or you're not. If you are able to accept the core personality of someone, then you're okay. But if you see that the core personality of someone has traits and values that you are not in alignment with, don't expect them to change anytime soon, and don't delude yourself into being able to change this person as well. So what does this all come down to? This all comes down to the fact that through time and dispassionate observation, you observe the consistent behavior of a person, and then you ascertain if that person is for you and if you can build a permanent and consistent relationship with that person. You need to get to know the consistent person outside of romantic situations to know who that person really is. If you don't, you be living in a lie, and you be waiting for Tigger to become Eeyore and Eeyore to become Tigger, which doesn't happen that way. So, my advice to you to get to know a person is, first you need to know yourself. What are your values? What are the things that you will and you will not accept in another person? Be clear about what your values are and what your boundaries are, and don't waver from them. Two, observe the person in non-romantic situations dispassionately, objectively, without denying what you see. And if over time, consistently, after 6 months or 8 months or 9 months or a year, if you can last that long, and you see behavior that is inconsistent with your values, based upon this, you know or don't know the person, and you decide or do not decide if that person is for you. It is just as simple as that. Know you the consistent person in non-romantic situations, and do not become deluded in the fiction and fantasy of the romantic person, and you will find that you can build a relationship upon solid ground, solid values, and consistent behavior. Okay, that's been my take. Yours truly, Charles Prosper, your consistency success coach, wishing you as always to remain consistent and be successful.